Hey guys, so now that production parts are in, I thought it'd be a good idea to go over again kind of what's included when you purchase these upgraded metal parts. Either aluminum or brass is what we have available at this time, because there are some differences between the plastic parts and the metal parts, and I thought I'd go over some of that. So, all right, so of course you got your front and your rear housings for the bottom part. So these are pretty similar to the plastic parts if you ever dealt with plastic parts. So you got those, and then the biggest difference is probably the part that actually holds your screen. So you do have a front and a rear, but you also have this additional plate. So this plate goes on this way, and instead of your fasteners coming on this side, I wanted to leave this all clean. But I also thought it'd be kind of cool to have a little bit more of an industrial look and have fasteners here, with the intention that this piece would be replaceable with, you know, something 3D printed, something acrylic, something you can basically it gives you that flexibility to do some kind of individualized, unique things with that. So for here we have some internal hex fasteners. So let's go over the fasteners that are included. So there are 3 different fasteners. So you have these very obvious, very short 3mm flathead Phillips drive fasteners. These are also a different diameter. So these are M1.7, I believe. And then you have these other ones that are, so there's 2. These are 5mm long, M2s. From the side, they look the same because essentially they are, except for the heads. So the head style one's a Phillips and one's an internal hex drive. Internal hex drive should be 1.5mm. And then you'll get bushings. So these bushings go into, once you have this all assembled and ready to install it, they go right in here. So one goes in here, one goes in here. They just sit in there, and you kind of hold them in place when you're assembling it onto your bottom when you're putting in your hinges. So that just prevents metal on metal when you're rotating it. You're going to get, of course, your flex cover. So once you got your screen and your hinges in, that's going to go there to cover your flex cover. Battery cover, that's pretty self-explanatory, right? That goes here, held with one screw, one of the shorter ones. And then, so let's get into these bits. Okay, well, this is the bumper, so this, get that out of the way. That goes in the front, the top of the front housing, right there. It's got adhesive. Okay, so some of the main differences between stock is, so we got a cutout for a 3.1mm headphone jack on this side, and we have a Type-C cutout. So if you're not going to wire that, and it is tricky just because everything's so tight. I have a video up right now showing, you know, some of those wire sizes needed, the routing that I kind of used. But if you're not going to use them, use these port blockers. So this just goes in and like that. And then this should be an M2 fastener Phillips drive that holds that in. So it covers that hole. And then same thing for the Type-C. So there's a port blocker that holds in here, but I think these are the shorter fasteners. So that plugs that Type-C port. And then there are also these that are spare. So, you know, if you wanted to upgrade later on, you can just take these out and then just like that, just take those out. And then if you're using a Type-C, this piece goes over. So you put in your Type-C board there, have it all, you know, you had it all soldered in, and you put this over it. So this little piece goes there, and then this piece, if you're using a 3.5 jack, use this piece there. So either way, you're going to have 2 extra pieces. So there's that, and I think that's it. So let's do. So if you're just want to know what's going on or what's included, that's it, I believe. from there, let's go into some assembly here. So this will be able to accommodate a wide range of screens. I think this is one of the ones that was tight in our unhinged. So I accommodated this. This is the Funny Plane 3.0 screen. This one should fit also. Yep. So note, depending on how thick of a screen you're using, right? Because see, this will actually fit a stock screen. So because it fits a stock screen, this thickness from this surface to this surface, right? You'll have to use something, like I use foam. This one's really thin. The one that currently, as of right now, this is October 2023, we sell this one. So this one's pretty close to OEM thickness. Of course, it fits that also. There should be some movement. Some have more than others. The reason why is because all these aren't the same. All the glass measurements overall. And I also don't know how big their maximum is. So I have to leave, fractions of a millimeter extra, and that's what you're feeling for movement. Front to back, you're going to have to use foam. I don't have any specific foam ready for, well, I don't think you probably wouldn't need it in here, or if you do, it's got to be super, super, super thin foam. But definitely something like this, you're going to need something. So just something to keep in mind. I hope to offer some more things in the future to help you out with that. But as of right now, I don't have anything. Also note with anything, if you have little touch sensors here. So right now they may work as is. You could try it out. But what I usually do is I take that off. It's kind of difficult. You can heat it up if you want. That'll kind of make that adhesive a little easier to move. But basically the idea is to move this whole touch sensor up higher. Move it close, but not touching this metal part. So what that's going to do is get that kind of away from this metal part, move it more in this area here. But before you do that, if you buy this from us, and I think most companies do this, before you do anything, before you move that, before you put it in the housing, before anything. So let's say this is new, this has obviously been installed, is plug this into your SP board, hold in your battery and test it. Make sure everything's good. Maybe even put in a game cart that shows some dark and light colors. There are some cartridges you can try out, like test carts and things like that. But if you just have a game, that's fine. Use a game that has black background and also a white background. Make sure all your pixels are good before you install it. Because one of the biggest things that can happen is these little solder pokey things here, these solder joints, right? They're able to puncture these super fine flex cables here. So, or this is bent a little bit too much and creased, and that damages it. So test it. The other thing to keep in mind is these are super small fasteners, as always. If you're used to building plastic parts and you have that feel of what it feels like to put in that plastic fastener and you're turning it, you got to kind of give it a little extra force. This is nothing like that, right? It's because there's threads on the fasteners and there's threads on these parts, right? So you should only be able to do it with your fingertips and then just a little bit at the end. You don't need to go until it stops or until you can't turn anymore. You will. It's aluminum, right? And it's aluminum, and the threads are super, super small and fragile. So something to keep in mind. Also, best practice when you're installing anything is put it in place. Let's say you're trying to fit something in there and it wasn't quite fitting. Hold it together, put your fastener in, right? If things aren't quite together and you're relying on the fasteners to bring it together, you're risking stripping the threads that way too. So that's probably especially useful advice when you're doing the screen. So to install let's do this screen. Okay, so let's put this down in. Move your, I'm not, you know, you'd of course remove your screen protector. Give that a turn. So that's going to sit kind of like that. Making sure it's not getting pinched. So this will be the hex drive. Okay, so there's your screen sub-assembly. Let's put our bushings in. On the prototype parts, these had to go in a certain orientation, so these do not. These go in much easier, I think. So we're going to feed the flex cable through that slot there. And you also want to be careful of these edges, right? Because these edges, it's a tight fit in here, and so it's easy to catch an edge and scratch the anodized surface. So just be careful. So these are some hinges I've used a lot. So they're really not that good, but it's what I have handy. So you'll have to have this at a certain, you know, I'm not sure what angle that is off the top of my head, but so to go in, you'll kind of turn it and you'll feel, because there's little keyways on these, so you'll feel it. This is assuming you've kind of watched disassembly videos on the SP. You saw that went in at about that angle. Same thing on the other side. Turn it until it kind of gets through that first part, and then but now the next part is I put in this cover. This is the smallest. I just put in the short little 3mm long M1.7. Okay. So I have this board that I use in another video showing all this wiring here. But at this point you would connect this. just like you would on any build. Struggle a little bit. Push those two clips in place. Again, I'd advise cutting off. You see how the flex cable is kind of close to those solder joints, solder connections? They're sharp, so in this area especially. So it's up to you, but that's what I'd do to help protect that. So now, this is where you'd add your diffuser. So we have this diffuser. If you ordered a diffuser and you can't find it, it's usually in a little clear Ziploc bag somewhere. I think we're trying to put it actually with all this stuff. So in the bubble wrap for the SP sometimes, or sometimes it's in the box. So the diffuser fits in right there, just drops in. If you don't have a diffuser, maybe you forgot it, maybe you're international, and you have a hot glue gun, you can make a really nice one by just putting tape on the front side of this piece here, so on the underside, right there. So put tape, blue painter's tape or some sort of easily removable tape. Push it on really hard, make a good seal, and then take your hot glue gun and just put it in those holes. And then within seconds, take off your blue painter's tape and you'll have some really nice diffusers there. So, so at this point you would put in all your buttons. We do have aluminum buttons, and I think we have some black, clear, and gray, I believe, plastic buttons. And the reason why I did that is in case you wanna, right now we don't have power, because those pieces come with a power switch, and maybe you wanna get a new one of those. So that includes those. We don't have, the shoulder buttons I haven't finished the design. I am working on these. If you use the other shoulder buttons that are designed for the unhinged, they're much wider here, and they'll probably be kind of floppy. So, I mean, you can use them if you want, and they'll probably work. I just personally wouldn't recommend it until we get these other ones in. So from here, add your buttons, add your speaker, add your D-pad, add your start select, your brightness control. At this point, if you wanted to solder, you'd solder. There's two little pads here. You can solder to either one. I think they're both connected. And you solder to this Q, reading this upside down, looks like Q128 or 12B right here. So this right above my fingernail. So that's where you would solder. Our screens, you don't have to do this, but so if you want that functionality of that button, you can use that. Because otherwise the touch sensors on our screen will adjust the brightness. But again, touch sensors can be finicky, so using this will connect to the brightness button. So from there you would, again, keep populating all these parts here. Let me zoom out. So put in your plastic or metal buttons. We have both. Put in your power switch. And then your silicone, so all your rubber parts. So these here go over your buttons. One thing to note is that these parts vary a lot, right? Depending on where you buy them. It took us a lot of experimentation to figure out what the best button size and some of these dimensions here for where the buttons sit. But this was the biggest contributor to how the buttons feel. So if they're too tight and they feel like they're almost depressed, try a different one, a different manufacturer, try OEM. One last kind of Hail Mary you could try if they're still too tight is to trim this off. So you could use flush cutters and try trimming off that little rubber nub there. So this is, it's one of the things of, again, trying to fit my shell to fit a whole bunch of different manufacturers for different parts who have a huge range of sizes of things. I try to make all my parts all my shells as much as I can, fit as many of the things as possible. What that does is it gives me nominal dimensions of screens and buttonholes and things of kind of large fits of things, or large gaps, or large, and it's intentional, right? So I'd rather have more parts fit and have to use foam on the backside than have one custom screen, or one custom thing when I can. So that's my logic behind it. But let me know if you only like one certain thing to fit. It's something I'll consider. I guess the hard part was getting everyone to consider or want the same thing. Okay, so on to the rear. Let's assume we have all this together. This is the same assembly. There's a lot of videos on the SP board, or the SP itself, on how to assemble it. From here you would you can put a fastener there. So this is going to be the shortest fastener. It's the M1.7 3mm long Phillips drive. So that goes there, that goes here. You can omit that one. Put in your power. So make sure you're careful with this. Don't break that off. Don't put your power switch in such a way that when you put your parts together that's going to snap off. Usually that happens more in the Game Boy Color, but something to be aware of. You have to use a stock battery with this one. And so your shoulder buttons are a good time to get that ready right now. So pretend all this isn't in here. So you're trying to build the simplest one. Maybe you don't want to solder. You can still do that. So from here it would be really straightforward. So from here you would put your port blockers in as shown in the beginning of the video. So you put your Type C port blocker. Let's just do that. Sorry. Type C, so then I can also check which fasteners. I think these are the short ones that go in this one. Let's try, just to make sure. Yeah. Okay, so these are the 3mm long Phillips, smallest ones in the bag. Go here. So that's going to block your Type C. And then you're going to use the big port blocker for the headphone jack. I grabbed an internal hex drive one, which would work. You can use those. I think those are the same thread. Those are identical fasteners between the internal hex and the Phillips. It's just the drive is different for cosmetic reasons only. So there's the longer M. So this is the longer M2 Phillips drive. So now you got those in. If you're using springs for your shoulder buttons, so now's the time when you put those in. If you're not using springs for shoulder buttons, it's easier just to drop them in here, put your shoulder buttons here, and your little post that you have from when you disassembled your Game Boy. Put those posts, put your shoulder buttons in, and go over. Otherwise you would take your shoulder button and you'd put it in here. Then you take this little piece here and it goes into that. So hopefully you can see that. So I brought it past it and let it slide into there. Okay, we're good. I'm trying to get slide there. Yeah. Let's see this here right now. I didn't bring the fastener to the board. I'm just holding it. Switch. So the cartridge goes into this. Working out the line with the switch, put it in opposition. Again, and these are nuts here. So here's, I'm just gonna get over there, get over it, and go wiggle around. Okay, so I just took off the wires real quick here so we can put this together a little more easily. Here's an example of what not to do. You can see the power switch, those little fingers, they became out of alignment with that. So don't do that. Okay, attempt number 2. So once it's aligned, you shouldn't need to really force anything. It should drop right in. Make sure your volume slider works, power switch works, triggers work, and then you could, if you have your buttons in, you can turn it on, and putting in a battery, of course. You know, whenever you're building something like this, it's not a bad idea to just try it out a couple times as you build it. Like right now, instead of putting in all my fasteners and putting in this fastener, make sure it works. And then once it does, then there's your battery cover and your fastener. I don't know if this battery's any good. No. Oh, yeah, it is. What do you know? So you can see this touch sensor actually does work, even though I didn't move it, but I'd still recommend moving it. It's probably going to tear when you do that, when you move that little copper tape piece. So here's an example where I moved it. I got it undone just fine. Sometimes it doesn't. Be careful not to scrape through if you're using a razor blade. Be super, super careful, because you can go through this adhesive and then it'll show up as a scrape right through here. So, because it's just paint. But you know, worst case, you can buy some copper tape, desolder that, and move it, because all it is adhesive copper tape. So anyway, that's it. Or if you really don't want to, you can hook up that brightness button. I will have some fasteners available, so I'm gonna actually have a test order of titanium and aluminum fasteners for these. So if you're interested, keep an eye out for that. Again, I mentioned I'm gonna have some prototyping going on for these shoulder buttons. I haven't started anything. People ask me about these. I haven't started anything for these yet. And for these pieces, they're kind of tricky because they kind of slide in. I got a couple ideas, but I'm trying to focus on these buttons first. I think they're more fun. So hope this helps. If you have any questions, let me know. But I also want to release maybe the CAD for this, so people can make some designs, make some like protrusions here, some features. I know I have some ideas in mind. I think it'd be cool to see what other people have, and then tag us on Instagram, and yeah, so I can see what you guys are doing. All right, well, take care, everyone. Talk to you soon.